So, you may have noticed during the day, if you look at other people sometimes, in the face, that is, you may have noticed certain things. You may have seen some happier, sort of, what should we say, innocent or spontaneous, youthful faces. I certainly saw several kinds of faces today. One really made me very sad. This person was obviously, unless they're a great actor, but I don't think so. They looked so perturbed and worried and upset as they were walking in the morning. They're obviously out for their morning walk, I guess, but it didn't look like they were enjoying their walk. It looked like this person was totally caught up in their thoughts. And he looked really upset. And I felt sorry because I just walked through the gate of this local park, and I felt so happy and uplifted by the scenery. And then to see this person, it was really quite sad. So anyway, we see all sorts of faces, all sorts of scenarios, don't we, during the day? Happy people, sad people. And of course, we don't know really what is happening inside their minds unless we're clairvoyant. But, if it's anything like what's going on in one's own mind, then one knows that there's a lot of confusion and heartache out there or in there. So as we sit like this, relatively calm, peaceful, relatively still, and begin to connect with our bodies and the sensation as we sit. We can allow ourselves to feel both the sadness and the joy of this life. And of course, it's very easy to take an extreme position. Some people may only talk about or only be aware of suffering and so forth, whereas others, may, you okay?
Yeah.
Did you fall asleep or you slipped? Or
I just toppled.
You toppled over. Okay. Do you need something behind you?
No, it's good.
Like a chair or?
No, that's fine.
Okay. So yeah, we're, and behind you, who is, welcome. So yeah, make sure you have enough cushion to support your back. That's important. Vivekji, do you think Anil has enough cushion to support his back? Maybe just put another cushion there in case.
I'll take the back of the wall like this. Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah.
Sorry, we had a toppling over here at Tushita. I hope none of you are toppling or tippling for that matter. Okay, so on the other hand, we can be so caught up with, I don't know, our own bubble of however we're feeling, and we may be having, some poetic epiphany, or, spacing out on, or really, on beauty or this or that, or the light coming through the trees, which is one of my favorite pastimes. But we need to be aware of how much confusion and sheer constriction, if you like, there is in this world. And I say constriction for a very definite reason. From one point of view, maybe from a slightly, elevated point of view, there is, okay, Buddha nature, we've spoken about so many times. And one of the main elements of Buddha nature, as we say, together with intelligence and kindness, is spaciousness, right? Spaciousness, space, spaciousness, sense of openness, spaciousness. And that allows a sense of openness and clarity and so forth to naturally, spontaneously arise. And it's said that we all have this quality of mind, the spaciousness. However, is it not right that, don't you think, from your experience also, that due to, well, beginningless ignorance, Buddhists would say, or however you want to put that, due to conditioning, due to habitual neurotic patterns of behavior, due to whatever, so many factors of like and dislike. Due to all of that, we somehow squeeze and constrict ourselves into a very small space. And we begin to think of ourselves as something very solid and therefore somehow hurtable. We can be hurt because we've constricted and begun to think of ourselves as something very solid, something very me. There's a me-ness, which is so powerful that somehow everything gets translated into, you could say, goes back to central headquarters. Is it okay for me or not okay for me? Everything. And if it's something good, we grasp for it, we want it. If it doesn't seem pleasant, we push it away, generate dislike. So is this not what is happening for most people, most of the time? Push and pull, like, dislike, hope and fear, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, gain and loss, being preoccupied with all these things. Good reputation, bad reputation. The amount of energy most of us expend in trying to be a certain way so that we will be acceptable to others. Whether or not those others, have some kind of measure that is worthwhile, is valid. Sorry, I may be sounding very philosophical already. What I'm saying is people are in a state of constriction. They are pulled by various desires and attachments and dislikes, aversions. And from the Buddhist perspective, we're also suffering from the effects of previously accumulated action, unwholesome action, ignorant action, which always leads to some kind of unpleasant, painful situation, feeling. I mean, just one example, and I won't say much more. We'll do some quiet meditation. But how is it, that since nighttime is supposed to be when we rest, yeah? And so after a sleep, maybe quite a good night's sleep, even 6-7 hours or whatever, so many people wake up in the morning and feel terrible, right? It's not just students who've been up, working late or whatever. But how is it that after a good night's sleep, we can get up and we feel terrible? What does that say about us, our situation? We can feel not very good bodily. The body may not feel very good. And then our mind, well, early morning kind of depression, very low spirits. This is very well known. This is a very well-known phenomenon. So why? So whatever the whys of it, this is what is, we are in a state of disharmony, most sentient beings. So in the Mahayana, as you know, you could say the path consists of opening our hearts further and further, wider and wider, so that we can embrace all living beings and help them to unveil their Buddha nature, lead them, help guide them towards full awakening of Buddhahood. So that's our motivation, if you like. That's the highest level of our motivation. And for that, we need to be pretty together ourselves, as the expression goes. We need to have a certain stability, and we need to have insight. And of course, we need to have a tremendously open-hearted attitude of love and compassion, obviously. So we start with the stability, but also in this practice we do every day, there's not just stability, but there's this ability to not get caught up in the thinking process, not to get stuck, not to go up and down with hopes and fears, to let go of the thinking process and to be able to come back again and again to the breath. But again, in a light way, not in some kind of heavy-handed, rigid way, but gently come back to the breath. Sensation of breath at the nostrils, sense of relaxing with the out breath. So let's try that for a little while, being with the breath and letting go with the out breath. Excuse me, when thoughts come, gently letting them go and coming back to the breath. Check the muscles of your face, that you are not tensing, that there's relaxation around the eyes. Very easy to tense up around the eyes. So imagine, actually, you could imagine, first of all, that you're in a very favorite place, wherever it is. It doesn't have to be out in nature. It could be, I don't know, it could be a cinema hall, but you feel happy and relaxed there. And let there be a little smile on your face. A kind of a relaxed half smile on your face as you relax those muscles around the eyes, around the jaw. Kind of a gentleness from within, manifesting in the face. If you need to, take a few deep breaths, letting go with the out breath. So let's sit like this for 6 or 7 minutes. Sense of stillness, sense of relaxation, but also very attentive, very present. Just being with the breath. Imagine, could you just pass this? Okay. So we are very slowly going through the four immeasurables. Maybe for some of us too slowly, but what's the hurry? Of course, they do say, don't they, that death is definite, time of death is indefinite. So if you want to practice, practice now, practice today. Sure. But I think sometimes I found myself sacrificing quality and depth in the name of, speeding through things, getting things, done. It's like somewhat like a really good spy novel or detective novel, if you like that kind of thing, something like that. Hard to put down. You just want to start and finish it, very quickly, maybe in one sitting sometimes. A little bit like binge watching, right? But I don't think that approach will work here. Certainly not with the four immeasurables. Because after all, we're trying to generate something immeasurable. Cannot be measured. That was peacocks, right? So you see, if we're in a hurry, we miss out on things. And we're not only in a hurry, we're also wrapped up, aren't we, in our thoughts, like I'm sure that gentleman was this morning whom I passed in coming out of the park. So miserable. That face was so miserable. I can't tell you. And it obviously not just coming from one day or 1 hour of certain kind of thinking. It seemed etched into his face through maybe a lifetime of pain or worry or whatever, anxiety, fear. But that person also has the Buddha nature, so has the ability to develop immeasurably, and to develop these immeasurable qualities. So we've begun to look at immeasurable equanimity, and we spent a good deal of time reflecting on, in a sense, the quality of self and others by focusing on the feeling element in the sense of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, and how that is something totally part of our lives. We cannot see it as something theoretical. It's very much a part of our lives, every day, all the time, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That is coming up all the time. And so we were trying to see how that is not just the case for me and for people I'm closest to, but it's everybody's reality, one way or another. Everybody, whether somebody is, trekking alone in the Himalayas, or whether somebody is in a nightclub or shooting up heroin or something, or listening to music or whatever they're doing, it's all in the pursuit of something pleasant, something which makes one feel happy. Again, that's not a very adequate word, but something that makes one feel somehow good, fulfilled, happy, so forth, all the way up to, I don't know, joyful, ecstatic, transcendent, whatever. And we're trying to avoid pain, discomfort, embarrassment. We're trying to avoid those things. And we're trying to see how, by slowly going through one, person after person, how it's a reality for everybody. Perhaps also one should do it the other way. One should search for somebody you think you know, or you might know, who doesn't want that, who wants to be unhappy, who wants to suffer, truly, deeply wants to suffer, doesn't want happiness at all. And sometimes, of course, it seems that way, that some people are addicted to their pain and maybe making money out of their pain somehow, or their difficult circumstance. But if we check deeply, are people really wanting to suffer? It's one thing to have a habit and to have identified with something, but what does one really deeply want that? Does one want to have, for example, low self-esteem? Does one want to loathe oneself in some way, or some aspect of oneself, of one's mind or one's body? I don't think we really want to. We're in the habit of doing it, but certainly doesn't make us happy. And we want to be happy. So we were looking at that, how it applies across the board to everybody. All these anonymous people whom we usually just regard as background noise, background shapes and colors. Often quite irritating, so getting in the way. Disturbing our peace. But of course, usually we don't use our imagination in that way. So what's our usual way of behaving, of interacting with the world and with ourselves? What's our usual modus operandi? So this is what one particular teacher says. I'll read this and we can think about it for a little while. We can reflect on it. And then we can have some discussion. And then we'll see, we might then have some more reflection and meditation after that. Of course, there are many traditional ways to go through this equanimity practice. And we'll also look at some of them as well. Because remember, we are, let me, for those who might be beginners also, we'll just remind you what the traditional or what the normal formula is for immeasurable equanimity. So it's in the Mahayana version, it has four stages in 4 lines, which go like this. How wonderful it would be if all beings were free from attachment and aversion, feeling close to some and distant from others. May they abide in this way. I.e., may they abide, free from being very close to some and distant from others, free from attachment and aversion. Yeah. Then comes the really, you could say, the leap into the space of the Mahayana, because up to now it's just kind of aspiration, isn't it? Of a certain kind, may they be free, or, being close to someone, distant from others. Very nice thought, but what comes next is very, is very radical, you could say, because the third line is, I myself, I myself will enable all beings to be free from feeling close to someone, distant from others. In other words, I'm going to do what I can, help them to be free of attachment and aversion, which is a major aspect of equanimity. And then the fourth stage, realizing one needs, in a sense, all the inspiration and help we can get, then it refers to basically the connection with the spiritual master, with the teacher. So the fourth line is, please, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, or rather, please, Guru Buddhas, seeing the Gurus as oneness with the Buddha, bestow your inspiring strength to enable me to do this. So that's the immeasurable. May all sentient beings be free from aversion and clinging, feeling close to some and distant from others. May they abide in this way. I myself will enable them to abide in this way. Please, Guru Buddhas, bestow your inspiring strength to enable me to do this. So obviously we're going to need some preparation, right? It's like we want to build this extraordinary edifice, some beautiful building, beautiful palatial building or something. So we're really going to have, and let's say the soil we are using is very unpredictable, in the sense that, and this we get this kind of soil, by the way, in many places, including where we built in Bodh Gaya. It's very clay soil, which contracts in and splits. It expands and splits in the summer, and it becomes very unworkable and slushy and muddy in the wet weather. So it contracts and expands all the time. Very hard to work with. You have to have very, very good foundations, or else, as we found out, you have to, knock down the building that was built without a proper foundation. So anyway, we're engaging in the foundational work. Very important. Otherwise, we can't really proceed very meaningfully. Because right now, our minds are full of bias. Okay, so here are some words from, I think, a very realized person, which may help us, inspire us in some way. It's talking about the practice we do after meditation, in the post-meditation, because it's one thing to be meditating here very peacefully at Tushita. It's another thing altogether to go up the steps and go out into the big bad world, as it were. If we are mindful, he's saying, basically, if we're applying mindfulness and being very careful and mindful, then we can break the barrier between meditation and non-meditation, or meditation and post-meditation. So the benefits of mindfulness practice and meditation begin to help us in our daily life. Often, daily problems, the pain of daily life, feel almost poisonous, right? I think we'd all agree with that. It feels we feel, somehow tainted, as though we feel de-energized. We feel, kind of yucky. So almost as though we've been poisoned. However, meditative awareness can help convert that poison into medicine, some kind of cheerfulness, the medicine of cheerfulness. We can slowly begin to change situations from difficult into delight, something delightfully workable. And this transformation may come through beginning to appreciate our life, including its irritations and challenges. Appreciating our life. It's a very simple English, simple phrase, but what does it mean, appreciating one's life? How can we appreciate our life if we're feeling miserable? Well, in order to work with difficulties, he says, from this perspective, this mindful perspective, you need to be present in your life. So it's important not to dwell too much on your memories. You may have good memories or bad memories. So whatever has occurred, whether pleasurable or painful, you can't reside in that memory, or you'll get stuck. You'll be stuck in the past. So the basic thrust of all this is to live in the present moment, the present situation. The present, we could say, is direct and straightforward. And our experience of it is heightened through being mindful, through being present. Remember, we keep on saying, slow down, pay attention. That kind of quality, where we're not in a hurry. We've begun to appreciate being mindfully present right now. When you're mindful of your breath in meditation, when you're mindful of your thoughts, when you're mindful of going from the practice of meditation to dealing with your kitchen sink, all those situations are actually in the present. You don't borrow ideas from the past. And you don't try to fundraise from the future. You just stay on the spot right now. So this is very easy to say, but not easy to do, is it? Because we often find it satisfying to have a reference point to what might happen in the future or what has happened in the past. So we feel more relaxed when we can refer to past experiences to inform what is happening now. We borrow from the past, we anticipate the future. That can make us feel quite secure and cozy. So we may think we're living in the present, but actually we are blind to the current situation whenever we are preoccupied with past or future. So otherwise, you see, what happens is, this is what happens with me, may happen with you as well. We become prisoners of a sort of neurotic thought process, which is constantly going back and forward, the past and the future. Not always something bad. I'm not saying it's always bad, but it does prevent us from enjoying and just being there in the present. Of course, in extreme situation, it can make us ignore the fact that we're boiling milk and the milk boils over. You know, our mind is so somewhere else. Or we're so restless, keep going in and out of the kitchen, that the milk boils over. We don't notice. Or the water from the AquaGuard purifying machine, it's running over. We don't notice. We got caught up in something. So that's not too dangerous. But when we get caught up in unwholesome thinking, painful, anxious thought, then that becomes problematic. And it is very, very, very easy, also very easy in certain company, in certain circumstances, to keep on dwelling on certain things, such as the faults of this or that person and the, you know, that kind of thing. So that becomes a problem. So when we say, you know, may I enable beings to be free from attachment and aversion, feeling close to some and distant from others, what does that mean? What could we do? What are the different ways in which, as a concerned person who really wants to help, and we may really want to help certain people whom we can see are suffering so much from the bias in their mind, what are we actually going to do? What can we do? I think this, we could discuss this. It could be practical, and we could draw on our own experience as well as what the teachings are saying. Because some of us have heard some of the teachings and studied some of the teachings. But what do the teachings say about, well, first of all, helping ourselves, I guess. We can't help others be free of attachment and aversion if we're not helping ourselves to be free of them first. So what would you say? If we were given the task of, say we were all loyal followers of, our teacher or guide or leader, and they said, right, get out there and help people be free of attachment and aversion, so that they're not feeling super close to some and distant from others. Kya karenge hum log? What will we do? Will I go up to them and start reading from books, and saying, yeah, well, this is very good quotation from Chogyam Trungpa, and what about that? How can we do it? How could we begin with ourselves? We have this strong attachment towards certain things, people, and we can see it's problematic. We know it's problematic. And we have strong aversion and anger even towards other people and situations. And most people, we couldn't care less. We really couldn't care less. If people are starving in North Africa, well, too bad, They're always starving there. And if we are certain, if we studied history, we'll say, well, it's the fault of the British, the Portuguese, the French, the Germans, and all the Belgians who all had colonies there and then left, exploited those peoples. But basically, you know, what do we care? Because how can we help them? How can I help people in North Africa, or the Horn of Africa? How can I help people across the Jamna or in some godforsaken locality in certain parts of Delhi I wouldn't want to spend 10 minutes in, you know? How am I going to help those people be free of attachment and aversion? What do you think?
One thought that comes to mind for me is that I'm so accustomed to running away from my own discomfort or pain, and that if I can lean into that a little bit, it makes it more possible to appreciate others. Because if I'm so busy running from it myself, then I don't want to look at people.
You're saying that when you run away from your pain, you're not really appreciating or understanding pain. So therefore you won't really appreciate other people's pain.
Yeah, and there's a tendency just to like block it out as much as possible.
Block it out.
That's my. So
yes.
When I feel discomfort, to instead of that habit of turning away from it, to turn towards it.
So what you're saying is, are you, that usually we're in some kind of denial about it, or trying to be, and yeah.
Or, no.
What do you think, folks?
I think sometimes pain can also teach you something. So sometimes you may go through a difficult phase, but the learnings from that can get applied. So if you undergo pain or you joy, those experiences can always be used for your future as or even in the present. Something that there could be learning from both pain as well as joy.
Oh.
And how do you kind of use those to better your life or the lives of others and sharing that with them?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things is connect with pain or deep feelings of suffering. You start to feel compassion, start to feel sense of connectedness with even the ugliness of parts of yourself, which to me sounds like empathy, like compassion for yourself, which you have.
So, yeah, in case you couldn't hear that online, Nitya saying that when we begin to really listen to, be with our darkness, with our pain, then we can develop more empathy towards that, compassion for that. And so therefore you're saying we could experience that in terms of other people as well, for other people's pain. So how is this helping us? And you're saying that will help us be free of attachment towards some and distance from others, in terms of the basic structure of the equanimity immeasurable, right? Say, just take the first part, which is, you know, giving it an outline. How wonderful if beings were, you know, free from attachment and aversion, feeling close to some and distant from others. Okay, so what could help people be less distant from others? It seems like what you've been saying might help in that. Does that also reduce attachment towards others? To feel the compassion for the pain, for your own pain and their pain? Would it reduce attachment? I think it would. I think it would. Because then you're not you see, because attachment is a mistaken mind that exaggerates the attractive or likable qualities of a person. Here we're talking of persons mainly, right? Not situations so much in the equanimity practice here. So if that's one thing, so then you can become, besotted or bewitched by somebody. But if we are looking at the suffering of the other person, what you can see is the pain, because we've begun to understand it in ourselves, and we know that other people also have that. So that's focusing on that is going to obviously reduce some of the other aspect, isn't it? One will not just be focused on the attachment side. One won't just be focused, in other words, on the attractive quality of the person, but on the fact that they're also a suffering person, right? And if we've really done the analysis on suffering quite well, the 3 kinds of suffering and the 8 and whatever else is there in the stages of the path teachings, then we have a whole other way, do we not, of looking at other people, whoever they are, ugly or attractive. Ugly meaning ugly to me, or attractive to me. I'm not talking of some kind of inherent ugliness or attractiveness, obviously. Somebody quite unlikable may come into a really good, kind doctor's waiting room, and they may not particularly like that person or the way they know that person behaves, but if they're a good, kind doctor, they will feel they have to help that patient with their sickness. Say that person has a particular physical sickness, say, quite a major one, let's say. So then the doctor wants to help that person be free of their sickness. So maybe, if we began to see others as basically sick and suffering, of course, we would still have people we like more than other people right now, but that's just due to karmic connection also. You feel closer to some people than to other people. But we would not have the strong, unbearable attachment or the strong aversion, which is what creates the problems, right? What about impermanence? Impermanence and death. Does that help? Death helps, right? Then you cut the connection with the attractive or ugly person, at least for a little while. Maybe you meet them again at some point in future life, but temporarily it cuts something. But I'm kind of being silly. Does impermanence and death, awareness of that, would that help us be free of attachment to some, close to some and distant from others? In the context of helping ourselves and helping other people be free of attachment and aversion? What do you think? People online? Anyone? Oh, sorry, I need to help you. Yeah, you can unmute yourselves. I've ticked that box.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dattaji, you're talking.
Yeah. Good evening. Good evening. Pranam. Pranam.
Pranam.
Pranam.
Pranam. Yes. Elaine, let us hear the wisdom from someone who's done all these Tibet house courses. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I am late today.
That's okay. Just relax, enjoy. Yeah. Anything, Elaine?
Kabirji, attachment with impermanence and death, I think contemplating on the fact that even our attachment to somebody may be impermanent, and it is impermanent. It is going to always change. And so I would analyze it as my attachment to someone is always subject to change. Also, it's because of a label. Actually, it's all imputed that it's, I have put a label on that person, like parent or husband or child or friend. And because of that, I'm exaggerating the relationship. Then one tends to see that if this person from 1 minute can be a very dear friend or a very beloved relative, and the next in maybe a days or weeks or months changes to somebody we don't particularly like too much, or because of circumstances we don't agree, and our feelings change, we see how impermanent this attachment can be. And if we can, I think if I contemplate on that, I know that people coming and going in my life are one day going to be friend, one day enemy, one day relative, one day not. They're going to be dead tomorrow. And how much is it worth investing so much attachment, which in the end is also going to cause me a great deal of suffering? Then maybe if I can come to terms with this or try to lessen this attachment, then I may be in a position to start then exchanging that place with someone I don't know so well, or extending my sphere of friends and relatives, and trying to be a little more equal in my attachment and aversion. Does that make any sense at all, Kabirji?
Yes, I'm still awake. Yeah, for sure. For sure it makes sense. Yeah. Sorry, I'm very dopey at this time of day. But I had a Snickers bar an hour ago, so I'm still high on the sugar. Yeah. We have a question, or we have a comment here at Tushita.
I have a
Question.
I think Elise is talking right now. She mentioned about how these are labels.
Oh, yeah, how we label, yes.
But for instance, a mother who is cared for you all her life, ever since you've come into your material world, there will be an exaggeration of their being in your existence. I mean, how do you distance yourself from, it doesn't feel like just the label, but much more than that exaggeration of even the things that might annoy you about them, and still being good, craving for that attention as well.
So what are you saying? That it's problematic to have love from the mother towards the mother? Are you saying that?
How does that fit into this narrative of it just being a label, disassociating?
Oh, no. What Elaine, I think, was meaning is that because of certain labels, we can use the label as fuel for our attachment or aversion. In other words, I'm blah, blah, and that person is the other party. And then automatically, I've already got a label. I've already cut out a lot of their reality because I've labeled them something. Okay. So if they are this party, then they can't be a good person, kind of. I'm naturally going to feel aversion for them or like them. So I think that's what they meant. If somehow we've been hearing from people that such and such people, like they have this in the West, that, gypsies are all thieves and are not good people, and they're dirty, and they come and they're not good to have around. And so then if you hear that label, gypsy, or if you hear that, oh, somebody used to be a gypsy, then you're automatically prejudiced. Or, it's like it happens with me. If I hear that somebody is an Arsenal football fan, then automatically in my mind, they are kind of a good person. Already I like that person. I have no idea about that person, but they're Arsenal football fan. Wow, yeah, then automatically I feel close to that person, Only later I might discover that they are a very rowdy fan, or, throw beer bottles at the opposition, whatever. So, there's automatically the prejudice. I think that's what labels can do, If we label a difficult situation in our life, a disaster, a huge problem, and, then that's what it'll remain. If we see it as a challenge, a crisis, an opportunity, blah, blah, then it's much more workable. So it depends how we label, what we label. Also, of course, from this point of view of middle way philosophy, we say things are merely labeled. There is, the letter A, for example, the letter A, if we draw it on a blackboard, the lines, then there's no way actually that that's a real A until we have mentally labeled it. If you're a person who is illiterate, you may see the lines that you and I see, but if they haven't learnt A, there's no A, right? So it's merely labeled by mind. It's got, it's got parts, conditions for those parts to come together, like a hand and chalk or whatever, marker. And then, but we have to label it. And then the point is, you see, we forget it's merely labeled. And we think it's a real A. In other words, this person I don't like, I've labeled them a certain way, but I forget it's just a label. They're not really like that. Why are they not really like that? Because if they were really like that, nobody should like them. So then how come they also have friends, who have labeled them friends? I label them enemy. Right now, America labels, they label Russia and China and not friends. China labels America not friend. China labels Russia friend. England labels Ukraine friend, China increasingly enemy, Russia big enemy, blah, blah, blah. It's all merely labeled. India, here's something where we can stand up. India kind of more nuanced. No one's an enemy among any of them, except maybe China, a little bit enemy. But we can't really be enemies with America. We can't be enemies with Russia. Much to some people's horror, we can't be enemies with Russia. We have a long-standing relationship with Russia. How can you suddenly become an enemy of a country like that? I mean, also they're not bombing us or anything. So anyway, for now, it's all merely labeled, and these labels can change. I could say death. I could label death as something terrible and something to be afraid of, and never to talk about at the dining table, never to think about. Or through study and reflection and hearing the, teachings from wise people, who I may begin to change how I label death. I may enjoy understanding more about death and wanting to learn about death and how to help myself and others die well. So it depends on how we label. So if I begin to label, I guess, I'm just following on from what Elaine may have been saying, if I begin to label all sentient beings as somehow suffering, but also kind, in that they've been kind to me life to life, and they're suffering of change, suffering of having the contaminated aggregates and so forth. If I do all those meditations, then I label people, I label everybody as a suffering, kind, suffering mother sentient being. I've totally changed the way I label and look at beings. So then equanimity becomes much more possible than when I label them friend, enemy, stranger. right? So labeling is critical. How we label. So thanks for bringing up labeling, Elaine. It's critical, isn't it? Because, yeah, friend, enemy, stranger, they're labels. They're labels. They're not the actual. And the point is, we get stuck on the label. They're not absolute truth, are they? So we get so stuck in that. And it becomes very sad, doesn't it? And it leads to violence. So much violence in this country too, unfortunately, because of our labeling. Labeling can lead to hate. Hate can lead to violence. I mean, hate is already a form of violence, and it can lead to physical violence. And it's good to know that sometimes, people go to Pakistan on cultural exchanges or whatever, they have relations there. And then they see they're just human beings like you and me, they just want to be happy, have a good time. They are interested in what we're interested in. They write, they get married, they have children, they, listen to music, etc., etc. They suffer. When it's hot, they're hot. When it's cold, they're cold. They suffer hunger, thirst, whatever. They die in earthquakes, just like we would die in earthquakes. So, they're not different. So that's one good thing that we often find out when we meet human beings rather than labels. Rather than meeting our labels, we meet human beings in the present moment. That's where the present moment is useful, yeah, because you may hear about, Pakistanis are like this, or, Bangladeshis are like that, and Americans are like that. Then you meet someone in the present moment, and you say, wow, what happened to that prejudice label one had given? It drops away, It drops away. If we are really present. If we're not present, then somehow we are then still seeing a person through an image. I think that is still possible. The person could be right in front of you. But if this image, which comes from the label, is strong enough, we don't actually see a person in front of us. We see, a Jew, an Arab, a Hindu, a Muslim, blah, blah, blah. And we react according to our prejudice. So, but if we really pay attention, there's something, can't remember I'll have to look it up. There was something extraordinary I felt in something that the English writer, Virginia Woolf, had written somewhere around, I don't know, early 20th century. She wrote, I think in, one of her novels, maybe To the Lighthouse, that one. Anyway, she said something, when I read it, I thought it was really remarkable. She said something like, when someone is there in front of you, you really pay attention to them, you really look at them. It's something like, how can you hate them? How can you not like them? How can you feel real anger towards them? When you really pay attention to somebody in front of you, to a person, not to what they did or what they said, which you're still reverberating in your head. Not that. But the person in front of you right now, in this moment, which is a fresh moment. So that's a challenge, It's very hard to be freshly in the moment. Everything, whether with a friend or stranger or a person not liked, always we seem to be carrying an image of that person from the past, based on past experience. Yeah, would you say so? Sorry, I've been talking a lot. Would you say that's correct? We carry images rather than seeing things freshly in the moment. Of course, in one way, we have to operate that way, otherwise we wouldn't know what we're doing. We go outside, we wouldn't know what things are called or how to relate to things or what a toothbrush is. We have to have an image, we have to have a name, a label, but it can be taken too far, right? And then I think Krishnamurti once said to a group of people in one of his talks, he said, you're not relating to one another, actually. You're relating to image you have of one another. So that's an interesting statement. We're not relating to people, a real person, whether they're your husband or wife or whoever. You're not relating to the real person. You're relating to an image which you've built up. And of course, that can create tremendous pain later, yeah, when the person doesn't behave according to the image. Vikram Bhai, how are you? Hiding behind your rectangle?
I'm good, Kabir, enjoying the discussion.
Oh, you mean enjoying my soliloquy?
I'm learning from it and enjoying it.
Good, good. Hope you're well.
Thanks.
Huh.
Also, what we were discussing yesterday about dehumanizing.
Yesterday, Tuesday.
Yes. So,
On dehumanizing. Yeah. When,
I
yeah.
think also the labels. So even in the classroom practice or even with the mother or the parent, because you would see the child as a report card.
Report card.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially with a lot of girls and boys at young age, you try to label them as this is a naughty boy. This is the girl who ran away. This is the boy with bad marks. And so you stop seeing the child as they are, but you start to label them with their report card.
Absolutely.
And someone who has a condition. Sometimes I think also in this context of mental health, I find that this has been a question that when we label someone, it would always be sometimes help them elevate their suffering, or would someone remain in that condition to now work further?
Didn't understand that last bit.
So the context with mental health, where we are coming up with more conditions like ADHD, this person has ADHD.
Okay.
This person has depression.
Okay.
Sometimes I find these labels
Constricting,
Yes.
limiting.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, labels can be. Yeah, absolutely.
They sometimes also start to feel like an excuse.
Sure.
So even for the mother and the child, if you reverse it, so because I am a mother, I can do it.
Yes.
I can slap the child and then.
Right. Yeah, very much so. We are over-identifying sometimes with something somebody said or did, and therefore we're not in the present moment with that. So as you say, we label a kid, oh, this is a naughty child, angry child, because of maybe one or two things they did. But that's not the reality of that child in the present. They may be experiencing a very loving, caring, patient state of mind right now, but we wouldn't see it that way. So, yeah. And that comes down to trust also, doesn't it? We are so confused and screwed up ourselves that we don't have trust in basic goodness, in the other person's goodness, whether a child or parent, anybody, because we aren't in touch with our own basic goodness enough, to use a phrase that connected with what we really are, is basic goodness, basic spaciousness, basic goodness. Temporarily caught up with confusion and arrogance and habitual patterns. Arrogance in the sense self-grasping ignorance. Self-grasping ignorance. Yeah. Which is why open-ended dialogue is such an amazing thing. Dialogue, as defined by Sambhava Rinpoche and David Bohm, this amazing physicist who had many conversations with Krishnamurti and so forth. It's like usually when we have a discussion, ordinary discussion, we are really in some way, we do have a position usually or an opinion, and it's very rare that we actually allow that to be changed or molded. We kind of want to hold on to our opinion. We're not that open to what the other person may say, especially if it's very different. So, and here I'm trying to talk about how we can soften our strong opinions and prejudices. This dialogue, according to these beings, is like when you come to a conversation or discussion between people, totally open, in the present, totally listening to the other person and not having a fixed view about anything, about what really I want that person to understand, you know. I hold this view, I want them to understand that. And because it's the truth, you know, because it's right, or because I don't agree with what they're saying. So how to be able to be totally open. For example, let's just take hypothetical. You may be in a conversation with people and somebody whispers to you, actually, see that guy over there? He's actually, he was a serial killer and he was in jail for 10 years, you know, and he also, you know, he raped people and he killed people and stuff. Then could we still have an open-ended, could we still have an open conversation with that person without feeling very prejudiced or that he's a bad person? Or that person was mentally troubled and they were kind of crazy for a few years and they've been in mental asylum. How would it affect our ability to have an open, kind conversation with that person? We're totally, and of course, this person may not even proffer any proof about what they're saying, but we would instantly might feel some aversion or attraction, you know, this person is a famous actor, actress, and, you know, blah, blah. Then you feel, oh, yeah, I want to get their autograph, kind of thing. Yeah, we're totally caught up right now, very much caught up in labels, in the past. Like the famous last line of Great Gatsby we've mentioned before. Anyone remember that? You saw the movie, Great Gatsby? Yes? You remember the last line? Anyone read the book, the novel? Yeah, remember the last line? It's a great last line. One of the few lines that I remember. He says, Scott Fitzgerald, right at the end of this novel, which has so many great things about it. He says, so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back, B-O-R-N-E, borne back ceaselessly into the past. Full stop, end of story. Amazing ending. I think they used it in the movie as well. It's such a great last line, you know.
What's the context of that? That last line.
The context, well, it's right at the end, so you have to read the novel. But basically, here's this person who, I think, I don't want to spoil it for you. Read it. It's not very long. Do you have any moments in the day which are not labeled dinner or morning walk or Netflix? You can label it something else.
Reading time.
Huh? Reading time or bedtime reading, something. Then you can. But yeah, it's a lot of his work is about the real dilemma of human beings who are caught up very often in a lifestyle that they don't really find any meaning in. And they're trapped, as you know, Gatsby was, in certain mindset and in the past also. Yeah, definitely. Attachment. Yeah. All great literature, I guess, pretty much will have great examples of attachment, aversion, also compassion. And of course, one sees the compassion in the author very often, how they see so clearly people's dilemmas, you know. They really understood human beings very well. And so you can feel empathy and compassion in the author.
I have a question. You
Sure.
mentioned that we need to live in the past. We don't need to live in the past, and we should just look at the present.
Well, I didn't quite say that, but what the author was saying that I quoted is that if we live in the past and the future, then we're not living in the present, and then there are issues connected with that.
But sometimes your past experiences, whether they are good or bad, can really help you to deal with situations in the present.
That I agree with, yes, if they're used skillfully
If they
and
use
not
it-
to, yeah,
not in a negative way, but in a positive way. Sometimes even a bad experience
sure,
teaches you something to handle something in a better way
sure,
as compared to how you would have probably handled it.
sure. Just in the context of this meditation on equanimity, if you had a negative or what you consider a negative experience with somebody in the past, it's quite difficult to erase that and just be in the present. It's possible. It is possible, I can tell you, but it's not always easy. Because the mind just insists on replay, like a old LP, gets stuck in a groove, right? Round and
Sometimes
round.
it can happen even for relationships. You have a relationship, say, I have a relationship with my father in a particular way, but certain things that I liked about him, I try and,
Emulate, yeah.
but the ones that I didn't like about him, also I make sure that I don't bring that as a part of my, I don't know how to say, but it's like even the things that I didn't like, I make sure that with my children, I kind of don't do those things which could lead to, them having a negative thing about me.
Has that been difficult? Has that led to you being in a state of anxiety all the time as to whether you were doing that or not? Or could you relax also with your kids?
Relax. Sometimes it comes naturally, I think. But,
Hmm.
you go through certain tough phases of your life, and there are certain things that, you learn from.
Yeah.
And then how do you kind of modify your own behavior?
How old are your children now?
So my older one is 28 years, and my younger one is 22.
And okay, yeah.
So they are old. Old as in not old, but they are not young.
Goodness me, they're not old at
They
28.
are not old, they are young. But
I remember a long time ago thinking people who are 35 years old are so old, but now I don't think that.
or people 6 years younger than you were better. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
As you grow, that 6 years becomes irrelevant.
So, yeah, are you less attached or more attached to your children now, do you think? Or
I am attached to my children. I don't know whether I would say less or more, but
are they showing signs of independence?
yes, yeah.
That's good.
They take their own decisions. I don't share with the decision.
Do they live with you?
No, we don't live that way. One of them is gone to one part of India. She will be hard. So he's doing some work there, and the other one is in Scotland. He's studying.
Scotland.
Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah. Absence makes the heart grow fonder also.
Yeah.
Familiarity breeds contempt. There's some truth in these, I guess. Okay, so it's gone 8 o'clock. This is a very critical, we label 8 o'clock as some kind of threshold, 8 o'clock. And it's not 8 o'clock in Nepal, it's 8:20 in Nepal, it's 8:05 here. Pune, I think, is the same time as us, although, never know with the Punewalas. Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if we've made any sort of, progress is a very tricky word, but we've been examining things. I think it's important, image making, labeling, these are critical aspects of investigation. whether we are card-carrying Buddhists or not, very important to see how we label everything, isn't it? Man, woman, gender, this, that, everything is a label, and then we forget we've labeled. This is one of the first teachings I got on emptiness from my teacher, and it was really helpful at that time. Since then, my mind's become more clouded and ignorant, but it was really helpful. The way my teacher, Lama Zopa, first, I remember one time, one of the first teachings I received on emptiness, he says he was referring to the building we were living in then. It was called the Priory, this big old cold building in the north of England. And he said, so we see it and we say, oh, there's the Priory. And then we forget it's a mere label, and we somehow cling to it as some real Priory from its own side. We don't realize that it's labeled by mind. It gets some kind of independent, inherent existence from its own side, independent of anything else. And that was quite useful.
I have one question. You've been talking
Please.
about labeling.
Yes.
My question is labeling and judging the same thing?
Labeling and
Judging a person.
judging. Well, it leads to judging, don't you think? It needn't always. If I label, oh, this is my toothbrush and this is my razor, it's a kind of judgment, but it's a very necessary judgment. So I start brushing my teeth with my razor now, my mouth will become very bloody. So I need to have certain labels.
No, but what I'm
Correct.
trying to say, it's fair to judge people.
You tell me. Is it
I
helpful?
personally don't. I don't think we have a right to judge people.
I would tend to agree with you. Partly because we don't know what that person's going through,
Yeah,
especially if we're judging them on their behavior.
yeah.
How do I know what they've been through that day or in their life?
Because my perception of that person forms on the basis of my judgment.
Yes, yes.
So I don't think that's.
Yeah, we're, like the Bible says, judge not that ye be judged, and all the rest of it, don't look at the dust in other people's eyes, look at the beam in your own eye. That all seems to be about perception, doesn't it? How we perceive wrongly, based on prejudice. Absolutely.
Even if there's a bias, some biases are conscious and some are unconscious.
Yes, I'm sure.
So sometimes it's very difficult, like the unconscious bias, I don't even know. It's just in me. And, that leads to bias. Which,
Yeah.
I'm not even aware of.
Not even aware, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, part of me, my kind of thinking I'm intelligent and so forth, doesn't want to believe that, but I'm sure it's true. So many unconscious. Can anyone think of a kind of unconscious bias which is quite strong in our life? What kind of unconscious bias do you think there is?
Like,
Apart from self-grasping ignorance, which is the biggest unconscious bias kind of.
there's one very nice example that I can share with you.
Please.
So the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, they used to always see people and make them play, piano or whatever they were playing.
For auditioning.
For auditioning, that's right. And they would see the person. And over years, what they decided was that rather than seeing the person, they used to put a curtain so that you don't see the person, but you only hear the music. And
Okay.
over a period of time, there were only whites at one time, mostly white people, white men and women who were part of the New York Philharmonic. But over the years, it's now become multicultural and people, different ethnicities have come. So they use this as an experiment to avoid the unconscious bias, because
Yes.
unconsciously be biased again.
Very good,
This
yeah.
was a very interesting example, and we showed the picture of, probably back in 1950s and then
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the year
good.
2010. And
Yeah.
we showed how it's changed.
Good. So unconscious, yeah. Having a curtain for audition, so you can't see the color of the person who is auditioning, and now it's much more multicultural as a result of that. The New York Philharmonic. Ji, sorry if you've had your hand up for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, so from Nepal, I wanted to add another verb, like attachment, you said it labels, it also strangles.
Strangles.
Because I feel that, with attachment come these stories that this person, let's say there's attachment to a person. So now this person is so wonderful, and now they're going to make me happy. So it strangles the life out of that person and turns them into an object that is now meant to satisfy me. And it kills the person in a way. Yeah.
Interesting. Yes.
And if we meditate on the impermanence of the person, then we can perhaps see that what we are chasing cannot really satisfy us because that person is changing continually. And why are we basing our happiness on something that is changing continually? So should we not look for happiness elsewhere? So that's what I feel.
You're undermining.
That's one of my antidotes, because attachment is so sneaky. It just creeps up and it can be so strong and very hard to detect, and when things get, so, but it's really sneaky. And you may think that, under the nice girl act, there is attachment because you want approval and you want to be liked and all of that. There's a lot going on, right? Yeah.
Also, what you said is undermining the institution of marriage and so forth. So so how does that work? The whole basis of society up to now has been marriage and stable.
Yeah, well, all I can say is je pense, donc je suis célibataire.
Okay, you are resorting to the French language, are we? Okay. So would you like to translate that into chaste Hindi or English?
Oh, okay, fine. So we've all heard of Descartes, right? Like, I think, therefore I am. So this is, I think, therefore I'm single. This is a little poster I had seen when I was working many years ago for a TV network.
Very good. Yeah, good advert for monastery or whatever, nunnery. Or just whatever. Yeah, okay. Well, on that interesting note, we can dedicate. Next session will be Sunday morning. So 2 days we have to watch our minds and do whatever, good, card carrying as well as non-card carrying Buddhists do. So we can observe and do, if you can, do take a look at occasionally at people's faces. And I think we can learn a lot from that. We don't have to stare at them because then also we'll be in trouble. But we can, glance at people and see them as human beings and realize that, they're going through all sorts of situations, all sorts of experiences, feelings, just like me. And anyway, and also we can hopefully enjoy being in the present moment. On Sunday, I will quote some more very interesting material on the past and the present and how actually it could be very usefully utilized. So this will be a kind of a little bit of a sidetrack from immeasurable equanimity, but not a total sidetrack, a very useful auxiliary practice which helps us. Because anything I think that helps us really be in the present moment with less image and less unwholesome label, that will be useful, won't it, for developing a balanced, calm, maybe happier, less anxious mind. So we'll do that. So thank you all very much for your patience. Those of you from Nepal, those from Delhi area, those from Mumbai and Pune. So, and then everyone here at Tushita. We can dedicate for the welfare and happiness of all sentient beings, where there is tremendous suffering of war and hunger and so forth. May the circumstances change to alleviate that suffering. May human beings, especially the leaders, take good note of the latest report from so many scientists that we really have to do something right now, change the way we live and behave, consume. Otherwise, yeah, there's not much hope for, there's no hope for a healthy future or healthy environment. Which makes the Bodhisattva path all the more relevant, resonant, and necessary. So we need to also develop, may we develop the wisdom and the courage, the courageous compassion necessary to navigate challenging times. May the teachings remain in this world for a very long time, and may the authentic great teachers remain for a long time to guide us. May they have long and healthy lives. May our lives become meaningful for others. Even for people who don't like us, may their connection with us make their life, help them in some way. Create the cause for them to wake up. May we see all the kind mother sentient beings as our guests and treat them accordingly. Okay, everyone, thank you very much. Thank you. Take care. Good evening. Good night. Yeah.